So now within this game, what I want to do is I actually want to make some of this stuff dynamic, and what we're going to be doing in the later lessons is what we had mentioned earlier. We're going to be looping through this rendering, and what's actually going to be happening is that we're going to be clearing out that canvas and redrawing everything over and over again, frame by frame, and that's how we're going to have movement, interaction, calculations for the game, and so on. So that's all going to be done within this render function. So for now, what I want to do is I want to be able to isolate this this part of the image, because as we look at, I've got this mouth opening and closing, I've got this up and down, so I want to actually set values for these, because I want to have the ability to change them dynamically as events happen within the game and as things change. So I do want to have that ability to have dynamic interaction. So this is going to be, I'm going to call it pack mouth, and the reason I'm calling that is because our mouth is going to open and close. So this is what we're just going to call it in order to identify it as being the mouth. And then pack direction, and this is the actual direction that our character is going to be moving in. And we can actually pull all of this stuff in within one object. So we do need to create a player object, and this can hold a lot of variables and values. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create over here, and then I'm going to create it as player X, player Y, and I'm going to have this pack mouth and pack directory object. So over here, instead of being a fixed position, so I still have yet to create these objects. So player X, player Y, so that's going to give me my coordinates of the player, and I'm just going to turn these into objects as well. So these are going to be 4 objects, and I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to preset the player object. And the way that we set objects, so variable player equals curly brackets, so X, so by default I'm going to give X a starting position of 50, I'm going to give Y a starting position of 100, and then we had one that we called pack mouth, and I'm going to give that the value of 320 that was there by default. And then I had another one called pack direction, and that one was 0 because that's where it's actually going to change when we change directions. We're actually going to be showing a different image as the direction changes. So for right now, this is probably all we need to select. These values of 32. So if we want to make them bigger and smaller, if we want to have that happening dynamically, we could add that in as well. So instead of being 32, we could change those dynamically. So if we wanted to, I'm just going to call it piece size, and for now it's going to be 32. That should be a comma. And then of course if we had different dimensions, so if we had a different horizontal size, a different vertical size, we'd have to update that as well. So now we can begin to add in some dynamic functionality as well within our game. So for now, I'm actually going to change this back to 32 so it fits on one line nicely, because that was getting a little bit long. And then of course if the need be, we can always change that back to the size there. So we're actually not going to use the size value. And within the next lesson, we're going to talk more about how to to set up your keyboard functionality. So we're going to be getting into that. So for now, within this lesson, we're just going to finish this off with setting up some scoring information. Because just like with any good game, you do need to have scoring. So I'm going to set a font. Now you don't need to set a size. You can just use the default values of fonts. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to set in a size here of 20 pix. Verdana font. And I have to also do the fill style, because we're using blue. If we change it to black, our default text, it's not going to be visible. So I'm actually going to make the text white. And if you notice, there's a pattern here on what we're doing. So the fill style is going to refer to the next actual action that's going to fill. So if I didn't set a fill style, it would take it as blue. So I definitely want to make sure I set a brand new fill style, because I do want to have a different color for the text. And then over here is where I'm actually going to write in the text information. So I'm going to give the Pac-Man, and of course we should set up a score. And here I'm just concatenating a string here in JavaScript. So this should be fairly straightforward. And I'm going to do a score for the ghost as well. And maybe I can set up ghost here. And then now I have to select where I want to position it. So just like the image, I can set up that property, that value there, the parameter there, as what I want displayed. And then here's where I position. So X first and then Y second. So I'm going to put it at 2 and 18. Quickly go back out to our page, refresh it. And I had to zip back here quickly because I do have to set up those score values, because that's throwing an error. So I have to set up variable score. And it's going to equal it to 0. And variable G score, and equal that to 0. So now when I go back out and refresh it, so there we have our text and our scoring, and then what we're going to do as well, we're going to have that score increasing as different actions and different things happen within the game.